Hi everyone. Well, it's my pleasure being with you today in this new series of live conversations on Instagram. Today I have a special guest who will be here in a minute. So thank you for being with us. Yeah, I'm going to give access to Rose, who is important. She will be with us in a second. We're going to talk about Jane Austen from a different perspective. Rose, so good to see
Hello.
you. How are you?
Hi. Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me well?
Yeah, fantastic. This is my first time doing an Instagram live, and I'm at rehearsal. We're just on our break, so I've ducked into another studio. Ha-
Okay.
yeah.
So no problem. Well, we have like I don't know how much time because you have to continue with your rehearsals. So let's focus. While people continue joining, I
Great.
would like to
Hi,
introduce
Genevieve.
you briefly,
Oh,
uh, just by telling how we first met. Because for me, that was like so amazing.
oh,
So
please.
I was in New York 3 years ago
Yeah.
doing a research visit at uni, and I was invited to attend the Chasna Retreat North region, I think. So I had to travel by train there, and Rose was so kind as to tell me how to do it because he was also going from New York.
Right. We met up.
So, so yeah, we were in touch, and you told me, okay, so let's meet at Grand Central Station very early in the morning. I remember it was like 6 a.m., something like that. And you told me by email, it will be easy for you to find me because I will be wearing a 19th century gown.
Uh
And for me, that was like, wow, so cool. So I arrived there 6 a.m. and there where were you? This beautiful girl with this amazing gown. So we were like, well, welcome to New York.
huh.
Then we have this long conversation about Jane Austen on the train, and I discovered that you knew everything, everything about Jane Austen. So it's such a pleasure having with you today. So please tell us about your play.
Yes, thank you. I was actually just thinking about that. So when we were going up to near Saratoga for that event, and so we took the train to Albany, and David Shepard picked us up and drove us the rest of the way, which was so
Right?
kind of him. I've just been using his annotated edition of Persuasion. I lent it to my Captain Wentworth, an actor named Rajesh
Mm.
Bose, who's wonderful, and he says that he's been helping finding David's notes very helpful. Um, so yeah, I've met so many interesting people through Jane Austen world, and you were one of them, Miguel.
Well, thank you. And I
What's that?
remember when we were there.
Oh,
Yeah, when we were there in Wiyawaka,
yeah,
Lake George. Well, we read with this dramatic reading of your adaptation of Persuasion.
yeah.
Okay, we have some Spanish speakers
Okay,
following us, so we have to try to slow
I
down a little.
appreciate the note. Okay.
So, can you please tell us something about why did you decide to adapt Persuasion into a play?
Um, well, I studied both theater and creative writing, and also this has been my favorite novel since I was about 13 or 14. So it just seemed like the thing to do. Also, it's interesting. It's one that isn't adapted as much. I have since read adaptations, stage adaptations, that is, and I know there are some others forthcoming. Um, but at the time, I had not yet read another play based on Persuasion, um,
Mhm.
and so I thought it would be an interesting challenge because so much of the conflict is not expressed verbally. It's Jane Austen's last novel, and of course, it's focalized almost entirely through Anne's perspective, and it's really you spend a lot of time being in her mind and seeing what she sees.
Mhm.
Unlike the earlier works, especially Pride and Prejudice, which is all about the dialogue, the witty banter. So, thinking about how to translate persuasion to a dramatic medium um, was an interesting question. And also, I love Anne, and they're letting me play Anne Elliot in this production, which I kind of blows my mind. Um,
Mhm.
But that was
So are you? You are Anne Elliot in
I
this
I
play.
am. I am. Yeah,
Wow.
I would not have insisted upon it. I would have been happy to have this company produce my script either way. But I did approach this project in part because um, I'm very fond of her, and I thought it would be an
Hmm.
interesting character to explore. Um, so, as I said to someone the other day, she's been my imaginary friend for more than half my life at this point,
Hmm.
um, and it's nice to try and figure out how to embody her. It's really a
Yeah.
joy.
Well, in a future program, live program, we will have to talk about persuasion, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like the novel, and especially about Anne Elliot, because she's an amazing character, right?
yeah, yeah.
But today I would like to focus on your play and on your reading of Jane Austen as a playwright,
Hmm.
because obviously, when we are just readers, we have a perspective, but then some people write. So when you start writing, you kind of change a little your perspective because it's easier for you to place, right, in Jane Austen's shoes, right? So like, what was she thinking when she did this? What was she trying to achieve with this? I don't know, with these resources. So you are also a writer, right? Not only this play, but also other things.
Hmm.
So when you read Jane Austen, especially Persuasion, did you find like these secret intentions of Jane Austen? Like here she tries to do this, or it's like, I don't know. For example, a play is usually, I guess, shorter than the novel, so you had to choose what is in, what is out of the play. Probably that was a problem for you, and probably you had in mind this was like totally basic and important for Jane Austen, so I cannot remove this, but these other things are kind of so not so important. So,
Yes, yes. Well, so the first draft was very long because I think my
mhm.
first instinct, this is also the first full length play that I ever wrote. So I was, as I was working on it several years ago now, I was learning how to write a play as I was doing it. Um, and my instinct was to just take all the dialogue from the novel and put it in, and then also add other dialogue to, stitch together where there is no, where it's not done in scene um, in the book, which made it pretty long. Um, One thing I've learned is that you do not need as many words to convey an idea on stage as you do in a novel. I think of Jane Austen as being a fairly pithy writer, and Persuasion is certainly not her longest book. It might be her shortest. Persuasion or Northanger Abbey, certainly.
Mhm.
Um, but still, a novel is made out of words, so you need all that language to convey it to the reader. But a play is made out of words and tones of voice and bodies and lighting and music and all sorts of things. So basically, um, I can give them one sentence of dialogue from the book rather than 5 sentences that Jane Austen wrote.
Mhm.
So that was one thing that was an interesting learning experience. The other thing is that I did a lot of research about story structure and sort of tried to break down Persuasion, the novel, um, into what seemed to me to be the essential arc. Right, as you said, I did have to figure out what was the priority for telling the story, and of course that involved making choices. It's an interpretation. I didn't set out upon this project with the intention of um, radically rewriting Persuasion or in that way, as some adaptations that are very good do that with their source texts. But like any translation is interpretive. It's an interpretation. Um, so I figured out what I sort of thought were the main beats in the storyline between Captain Wentworth and Anne, and what was the kind of minimum exposition and background information that needed to be conveyed to set up this world and make the conflict clear. Um, and yeah, I cut Mrs. Smith, as you know,
Mhm.
who is a sort of an interesting figure in the book, but she is, she's one of those parts that's, there's some controversy among Austen scholars about whether Jane would have continued to revise Persuasion if she had not been dying. Right, she finished
Mhm.
her first draft, her only draft of Persuasion, um, approximately 1 year before she died. But she did start Sanditon after that, but she was ill at the time, um, and so she had this novel in a drawer. And at one point in one of her letters, she did write to Fanny Knight, "I have something ready for publication." So Juliet Wells, for example, has argued that that means in her head she was done with it. That was it.
Mhm.
But I think as a reader, when you compare it to Emma, which is the last novel that she saw through the press during her lifetime, um,
Mhm.
it does seem that all the loose ends are tied up so beautifully in Emma, and it's sort of it's just it has a kind of polish that Persuasion, and especially the second half of Persuasion, doesn't have. Um, so I took the liberty of deciding that the subplot with Mrs. Smith was inessential, um, and did away with that, largely for time reasons, but also because um, that moment in the book, it's a lot of text, basically, to just confirm what Anne instinctively already has known and decided, right? We've learned what we've learned about Anne before Mrs. Smith gives her revelation about Mr. Elliot's evil backstory, is that she doesn't fully trust Mr. Elliot, and she would rather live with her father and Elizabeth for the rest of her life than escape into a marriage with this man that she has a bad vibe about him. And he's not Captain Wentworth. Um,
Yeah.
so we were actually just working on that scene this morning, when Lady Russell, sort of tries to talk her into it, and she says no. And I think that's the essential thing for Anne's growth arc as a character, and that whatever Mr. Elliot's ulterior motives are is not quite as important.
Right. And what about, because I don't know how difficult it is, because you said at the beginning you try to keep all the dialogues,
Yes.
because dialogue in general are a treasure,
Yeah, they
right?
are.
It's about dialogues. But did you find easy to, because one thing is reading a dialogue,
Mhm.
and another thing is speaking a dialogue.
Yeah.
So are Jane Austen dialogues dramatized? I mean, can you actually keep the words, or do you need to shorten them a lot?
Well, so that's another interesting thing, is that as I was shortening, I found myself inserting a lot of ellipses. So Jane Austen's novels tend to speak pretty coherently without, Jane Austen's characters, rather, in her dialogue in the novels, um, don't hesitate or interrupt themselves and so forth. But that's how real people tend to talk. So part of what I did, which was, I didn't even think about it as an artistic choice so much as a matter of shortening the text, whittling down the word count. But I just have people sort of start sentences and not finish them entirely. And I kind of I think does make it more lifelike. But I was also pretty concerned about. Um, I was really interested when I was working on this in the idea of trying to have as much historical accuracy or verisimilitude as possible within the language. So I paid a lot of attention to either using Jane Austen's own dialogue or in the dialogue that I invented, trying to make sure that all the words and grammatical constructions and idioms actually did predate 1814. I was kind of, I spent a lot of time with the OED and the Google Ngram Viewer, which is this kind of amazing resource where Google enables you to search the corpus of all the books that they've digitized, which is thousands, year by year. So you can find, did people use the phrase "still waters run deep" in 1814? And they did, yes, but it meant something different than it means now. It meant people who are quiet might be plotting to kill you and you wouldn't know it.
Yeah,
So
that
wasn't
sounds
use that phrase
challenging.
to describe Captain Benwick. But yeah, so it's sort of, it's been interesting to try and create this script that is, in my mind, fairly naturalistic, and yet it has these moments that are flashbacks and sort of playing with time, and or you're in Anne's head. Um, and then the director I'm working with is very is known for his weird staging, right? So
Okay.
so we're sort of we're bringing together this kind of somewhat naturalistic script with like just actors using their bodies in really interesting ways, or visual pictures that's created by the company, and yeah, I hope it'll turn out well. I'm having so much
Yeah,
fun.
I'm sure I will. Well, because we Jane Austen readers
Mhm.
and fans, every time a new adaptation is released, it's like, oh, we are kind of afraid. What am I
Yeah.
going to find, right? And then we see it, and one of the problems is that probably we are expecting to find everything, right?
Mhm.
The whole book into the adaptation.
Yeah,
That's impossible.
it's
So you know that Jane Austen readers who will see and love your play, they will be expecting to find things, and there won't be
they'll be
some
like,
of them.
oh,
So this
I
is
want
your
to be
own
Mrs.
reading.
Smith.
So are you afraid of Jane Austen's fans' opinion about your play?
Not really. I mean, so this script, I've workshopped it quite a lot. It's had a number of readings at Jane Austen related events, and I think I've gotten pretty positive feedback on it. I'm a sincere Janeite, right? Which not everybody who adapts Austen is like as immersed in this world as I am. So I feel like uh, I guess I sort of feel like if it's faithful enough for somebody like me, then it should be faithful enough for other people. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
really true. Um, Maybe there are lots of Janeites out there who are like, well, that was a ridiculous choice, and they just haven't said it to me. But
No, I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. Actually, I
you.
still keep the manuscript you gave us when we went there. So I have like one of the original version of this play. So when you
Yeah.
are famous and rich, I will show you. Like I have the original
Okay.
script,
Well,
right? And we
I'll
read
rent
it.
it for you if you need it next time you come to the U.S. Yeah, you read Captain Wentworth with me that
Yeah,
day,
that
right?
was a
Yeah.
pleasure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was there doing Captain
Yeah, that
Wentworth, a
was that.
Spanish Captain Wentworth, right?
Yeah. Well,
So are there songs? Are there
what?
songs in the play?
There
Are there
are, yeah.
songs, music in the play?
But yes, yes, we're doing so. As you remember from the script, we're doing. We might have cut one of the songs, I think, that was in the early version of the script, but we're working with music director, and so there's folk music and an aria and some underscoring that's Beethoven piano sonatas, stuff that's all from the period, and that I think so. It's not a musical, but it's there are moments where that characters are sitting around doing music for each other, which is, of
Mhm.
course, what people did in real life before they had Instagram. Um,
Yeah,
so,
because music is actually really present in Jane Austen,
yeah.
but we don't usually listen to it. But I remember
Mhm.
listening to your friend Maggie singing the songs, and you were like, "Wow, this is so beautiful,"
Yeah.
and it really fits into the story
Yeah.
because they're talking about music, playing the piano, singing, but we never listen to this in the books, obviously. So listening to it in the play is going to be amazing for
That's
sure.
very true. Yeah, it's like there are elements of Jane Austen's world that her original readers would have just understood, filled in the blanks on their own, and that we don't necessarily get as 21st century readers, but that an adaptation can kind of put back. So in a way, it's diminishing, it's losing something from the book because you don't get the whole story and all the beautiful words. But it's also an adaptation has the potential to um, add something back too.
Hmm. How about working because you are the playwright, right? The script writer. You are an actress in the play, but there is a director, right?
Yeah.
Who is like taking decisions, right? Deciding things that probably sometimes are not what you would have thought, right?
Well,
So how is this teamwork between you two?
that's a great question. Actually, so far it's been really easy. There are a couple of things that we've been working on, which I just love, and would never have thought of, because I feel like so the director's name is Eric Tucker, and he's really wonderful. His style is very visual and kinesthetic and just quite different from the way I think about making an art piece. I'm more verbal and literal and boring or whatever. So figuring out how to bring those two modes of theatrical storytelling together has been really interesting, and I felt very, throughout this process, quite respected as the playwright. I think if there's ever a question about what the moment is supposed to mean for the story and that sort of thing, it's something we can talk through.
Right.
Yeah.
Give us the news.
It was.
When is?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. When will it be released?
The play. The first preview is on September 11, and the official opening night is September 21st, and we're scheduled to close October 31st. So, God willing, New York City will get its COVID stuff under control, and the theaters will not have to shut down again. That's my earnest prayer. But we seem to be moving in the right direction for that, I think. And of course, all the actors are vaccinated, and the audience will be vaccinated and masked. And so far, thank goodness, nobody's gotten sick.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be amazing. I hope I will be able to see it in the future. Are you planning to, record it, to have some recorded copies?
I don't know. It's not something that we've talked about. I mean, I would love to. This project I started writing this script 6 years ago this fall, while I was out of town doing another show. So it's been a long-term labor of love, and I've already started thinking, oh, when it's over, what am I going to do? I'm going to be so sad. I mean, I have a couple of other projects lined up for the spring, but I would love the opportunity to do this again in another city or something. Yeah, we haven't talked about recording it or having a Zoom version or anything like that, but maybe. There's some prospect, it seems, of remounting it at a theater festival elsewhere in the U.S. Early next year. I would love for it to come to Spain. Thank you so much for asking. If you know any theaters there where they'd be willing to do a play in English, let me know.
Well, yes, for sure. But I think that the recording it will be amazing. There are so many fans of Jane Austen.
Yeah.
So if we had the opportunity to see it, sure, we will love it. But I don't know. I guess this is complicated. So, well, anything else you want to say about your play? I will ask you a couple of questions more about other things, and then I will leave you free to go back to your rehearsal.
I don't have anything else that I need to get off my chest. I wanted to ask you about, to continue our conversation from the other day when I had the pleasure of seeing you in person in New York about doing your creative writing that's inspired by Austen, how you approach that. Were you intimidated? Are you intimidated by the Janeites? Or were you?
Yeah, this is a
funny. And that was before Twitter even existed.
Well, yeah, we have been talking, as you did, I started thinking about this project, right? This book, Jane, which is a biographical novel about Jane Austen that you have read. It's been a long process, and I had this fear. It's like, okay, I'm going to write about a really well-known, beloved person. If I don't get the tone, if I'm not able to reflect her personality, they are going to crucify me, right? Like they're going to hate me, right? So, but then a moment arrives when it's like, this is my reading. I'm doing it. I have done a lot of research, so I know this is historically true, and then this is my reading. So if they don't like it, that's their problem, right? So don't read it.
Yeah, that's what all art making comes down to, doesn't it? But you, so when we were speaking the last time, I think you said, which I didn't know before, that you had the idea for this biographical novel inspired by Jane Austen's life, which is the first biographical novel inspired by Jane Austen's life ever to be written in Spanish, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then you started doing research for it, and then you were like, oh, I actually need to go get a PhD in English literature in order to do this properly. So you became an Austen scholar, as part of the journey of writing this book. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually say that Jane Austen changed my life,
Yeah.
and it's completely true, right? Because if I hadn't thought about writing this novel, I wouldn't have done my PhD. I wouldn't be a professor at the university now. I wouldn't be at Berkeley at the moment. I wouldn't have met you. So Jane Austen changed my life completely,
Yeah.
for good, right? So yeah, because there is something in Jane Austen, as you know, that is like something different to other authors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just she's a really good writer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there is a personal connection of
Yeah.
some people with Jane Austen. We find something in her which is like different. For me, I don't know, principles, her way to see the world, I don't know, her way to go into human beings. What about you? What do you
Yeah.
find in Jane Austen?
Oh gosh. I mean, it is remarkable how many people from different, cultural backgrounds and points of view across time and space do feel that her work really resonates with them, right? And I mean, it's not everybody; it's not literally universal, but um, she does, she does really speak deeply to a lot of people, and I suppose it's a variety of things, right? Her work does a variety of things really well. I find it very emotionally satisfying. Like it's a story world that is it's not so bleak that it's unpleasant to spend time there, right? I'd rather cosplay Anne Elliot than Anna Karenina, right?
Hmm.
But also, it doesn't feel to me so unrealistic as to be saccharine, to be boring, right? It's very stimulating both emotionally and intellectually. Oh, I see that Mary has a question. Um, should we?
Yeah,
Should we do that?
yeah.
Hi,
Do you
Mary.
want to answer the questions? Yeah, sure.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good question. So Mary asks, uh, ever change any lines in a read through or rehearsal? Does the text on the page sound different to you once spoken aloud? Yes. Yes, we're still changing lines. I think up until the first um, the first full production, certainly, which is happening now, or maybe even until the script is published, if it ever is. The I'll be adjusting the text little by little to suit the needs of the moment and the company. Yeah, when you asked Miguel about, I was thinking about this when you asked about what it's been like working with the director. Um, I've done a bunch of staged readings of this in 2017 and 2018, and then I've kind of been away from it for a couple of years. So I'm coming at it with fresh eyes. Um, and I worked with some really wonderful actors and directors in the readings, but I found that it took me, it required a conscious adjustment on my part as a writer to just like hear words that I'd written said out loud by other people. Um, because first of all, it feels almost like embarrassing. It's like I remember the first table read that I sat through, and I was just like blushing the whole time. It's like, oh, these things came from inside my head, and now other people are seeing them. And then also, you do, or at least I do, tend to hear it in a certain way. Hear the rhythm of a sentence. I sort of, my experience of creating dialogue, of being a creative writer of dramatic literature, is that the characters, when it's going well, the characters sort of start to talk to me, and I hear their inflections and so forth, and so it's been a task and an honor and a privilege to learn to let go of it's being exactly the way I'd heard it in my head. Um, but also, I've worked with such wonderful actors who have brought things that I never would have figured out how to do on my own, and nuances and subtleties, because they're focused in a different way. Right? It's truly theater is a collaboration, as it should be.
Well, it sounds amazing, Rose. I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. Please do something because we want to see it. So either record it or do it again and again. Come to Spain, do a Spanish adaptation, whatever. But
Thank
we
you.
need to see you there. We want to see Anne Elliot, Sarah Rose Kearns. So it's going to be
Thank you, Miguel. Do
amazing.
you have any plans to return to? I know you're still in Berkeley now. Do you have
Yeah,
to
a
study
couple
in
of
New York
weeks
again?
and I will go back to Spain. yeah, next year, God willing, I will be back again
Oh, okay.
in America. This time in Boston because I'm planning to do a research stay at Harvard. But
Oh, fantastic.
I don't know if COVID will let us do
Yeah.
all of these kind of things.
Yeah.
Let's hope it will.
I am planning to go do some research at Chawton at the Austin sites in
Wow.
UK next summer if COVID permits. So we'll see.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Taunton yet.
Me
I will
neither.
be there.
Me neither.
I don't know.
Almost every Jainite I know has made the pilgrimage at least once, but I have not.
Okay, so let's meet in Taunton, you know?
Sounds
So,
great. Sounds great.
well, you know, I really love talking to you at Jane Austen. We have had like really long conversations with Jane Austen, some of them with some public.
Yeah.
So I hope that,
yes, we took a
yeah.
train ride together, and we were talking about Jane Austen the whole time. And then at the end, the guy in the seat in front of us turned around and said, "What? Like, I just got a free college class." Or something like that.
Yeah, it was the best conversation about Jane Austen I ever listened to. Like, oh, he was interrupting the whole time.
Yeah.
So yeah. So well, as you say, break a leg. The best for you. I'm sure it's going to be a success. Hope to talk to you again soon, right? About other topics about Jane Austen because we will never stop talking about Jane Austen.
That's
So it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the people who have been listening to us now and people who will see the recording because this recording will be available, right? So thank you so much, Rose.
Hi.
Good luck.
Okay. Goodbye. It's great to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.